The privilege of a lifetime is being who you are, moving from an inauthentic existence to a life of authenticity, moving from childhood to maturity in your thinking and what that maturity looks like. So, in that high cause, I welcome you here to our conversation today. Happy Easter, everybody, in these challenging and dark times. We are moving through a threshold moment for humanity where right thinking and right actions will pull humanity through this threshold question, which is, will we live with heart and humanity, or will coronavirus and its repercussions rob us of our heart? Welcome.
Our first question today, Ronnie. What is the relevance of Easter and religion to how we cope with coronavirus and anxiety?
I think many would say rightly that religion too often is the wound and not the bandage on humanity. But when you look at it, it can also be the bandage on humanity's suffering. It can lead people to right thoughts and right actions, and to even challenge themselves in the cause of justice, to do a fearless and searching moral inventory. So the example of Easter and Good Friday is really the story of that we're all called out of the house of slavery and bondage, as the Hebrew slaves were called out of their enslavement to the Egyptian taskmasters. Through the wilderness journey, so through trials and tribulations, that's the heroic journey that we can all undertake. You might say getting past our fear of failure or a fear of perfectionism and finding our promised land, which is our bliss. Finding that point in yourself where your experiences on a physical plane match what is true and what is best in your heart. You live from your bliss, which is the best version of yourself. And the end journey there is to have the wisdom and the power to serve others. So the Easter story kind of reminds us that religion is not just about the ruling class and their symbols of what God is. It was about Jesus as Son of Man, prophet, enemy of the state, who kicked over the tables of the money changers. And he says to each of us, do not be conformed, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind and your spirit. The so what of that is that we cannot live successfully in this world without a place of quietness and peace within. To return to that island of peace within our soul, perhaps through our spiritual practices like meditation and prayer, random acts of compassion. But it's also to realize that the Easter story, when you peel away all the symbols and all the mythology, it's not about an alleged resurrection of a dead body on Easter Day. That never happened. It is about the resurrection of the human spirit and the awareness that no tragedy in life can imprison us. Not even sometimes the tragedy of our minds, but that God has more to say to us about life, and not even Jesus' death on a cross could contain, could imprison all that God has to say to us about life and what we can yet become with God's help. That's the story of Easter, the move from immaturity and imprisonment by life's tragedies to the resurrection of the human spirit, to finding that God is not done working with us and helping us.
Just one more question today, Ron. God bless the protester. How is civil disobedience and protest part of the Easter story?
A lot of people, and I include myself in this when I was younger, thought that religion was all about conformity And sadly, it often is. If you look at major churches, it's all about power over others rather than power with others and actually listening. Christianity should be more of a listening religion. Unfortunately, power, as Lord Acton said, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We've seen just this week that the cardinals, some of them who are on trial for crimes against children, have bought a legal defense that only the wealthy can buy. What would it be like, for example, if parishioners in protest boycotted churches where crimes, it's been proven that crimes have occurred, and things have just been hidden by the church as an institution? I speak this not only against particular churches, but against the church as a whole. It's a time for us really to learn from those people who are powerless. Or maybe not powerless, but don't have traditional power, but the power comes from their personality, from their resilience, and from their fight for justice, both in the courts and on the streets. So the message of Easter is that Jesus, on Palm Sunday, with the Passover celebration, later called Palm Sunday, did kick over the tables of the money changers in the temple and prevented anyone from getting in, except for a couple of groups of people. They did get in, according to the scriptures of the New Testament. Jesus kicked over the tables of money changers. He drove out those who were trading in the temple, the Holy of Holies. And then the scriptures tell us Jesus healed the sick. And he brought in the people who were blind and disabled and who had been forgotten in his society. So he actually drove those out who were making money, and he welcomed in those who were the least, the last, and the lost. That is the work of a prophet. That's the work of a person who is an activist engaged in building a better humanity, sometimes one brick at a time. In our groups at our church, Coburg United, we've been talking about the nonconformist and how it's often based in a deeply spiritual journey where spirituality is not airy-fairy, but it's really saying, how will you live deliberately? How will you live intentionally from your essential self, which is spirit, which is your divinity? And to help people to do that. One of the things that we've been talking about with nonconformity is that sometimes I can not conform to an institution because I might be an angry man, or I'm just a curmudgeon or a contrarian. That form of nonconformity can disguise my emptiness. So the other side of that is that we can conform sometimes to an institution or a program, to an imposed system, because we don't want to risk not being loved. Those people who have really changed the world have risked not being liked and not being loved. Those people who have really changed humanity for the better have risked occasionally making wrong decisions. Why? Because they felt in their heart of hearts that there were people who were not being treated in a way that respected their divinity and being created in God's image and likeness. Those institutions that fight against the dignity of all people, including women, the LGBTI community, and minorities, those institutions must come in for sharp rebuke from the people. Those organizations that don't uplift the hopes and dreams of the working man and woman must come in for sharp rebuke from people of goodwill, from people of conscience. So Easter, Good Friday, Palm Sunday is a story of God bless the protester. in a worthy cause. I want to encourage and uphold all of you. Soul, come forth and create. And let us be a part of your hero's journey as you live from the true spiritual divinity within you, from the best version of yourself. I thank you for your excellent leadership in these times, in this season of our lives. Remember, this too will pass. Coronavirus, COVID-19 will pass, and we will come out the other side, but let's come out the other side together, holding people with our love and friendship. God bless. Happy Easter.